I never thought a single night could feel like a lifetime, but here I was, trapped in the quiet aftermath of my own mistakes. The bedroom, usually our sanctuary, had turned into a chamber of tension. The moonlight spilled across the floor, casting a pale glow on the sheets, but it did nothing to soften the icy silence that had settled over us. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands wringing together, listening to the faint hum of the city outside, and counting the seconds since he had gone still, since he had stopped speaking altogether. It had started innocently enough. I thought I was being playful, adventurous, pushing boundaries to keep the spark alive. I had read somewhere that couples should never lose the element of surprise, that experimentation kept desire vibrant and relationships strong. But somewhere along the way, I had misjudged. My timing had been off, my approach too bold. I could feel it the moment I touched him differently, whispered words that he didn't respond to. His stiffening, the tightness in his jaw, the sudden stillness, these were not signs of excitement. They were warnings. And yet, I had ignored them. I had laughed nervously, thinking he was just being coy, playful in his own quiet way. I leaned in closer, trying to coax him into my world, but the longer I tried, the more I realized the depth of my miscalculation. His eyes, which usually sparkled with warmth and mischief, now looked distant, shadowed, almost hollow. He didn't push me away, not exactly, but he didn't meet me halfway either. It was as if an invisible wall had risen between us, separating my intention from his consent, my desire from his comfort. Afterward, I thought I could apologize with words. I tried, softly, "I'm sorry. I thought you'd like it," but he didn't respond. Not a single syllable, not even a sigh. The silence stretched, each second heavier than the last, and I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just irritation or momentary upset. It was deeper. It was hurt, disappointment, a quiet withdrawal that cut sharper than any argument ever could. I paced the room, tugging at my hair, trying to figure out how to fix what I had broken. I replayed the evening in my mind, every gesture, every word, every laugh that had preceded the moment he froze. How had I not seen it coming? How had my eagerness to please, to excite, become a source of discomfort instead? I felt sick, guilt twisting in my chest like a live thing, coiling tighter with each heartbeat. He sat on the bed, rigid, hands folded in his lap, eyes fixed somewhere beyond the wall, and I realized that no matter what I said, my words were useless until he was ready to let them in. Silence, I thought bitterly, is sometimes louder than any scream. And his silence was deafening. Hours passed, or maybe minutes, I couldn't tell. I tried small gestures, soft touches, gentle reassurances. I slid closer, letting my hand brush against his arm, hoping for a flicker of connection. Nothing. I whispered his name. Nothing. I tried humor, teasing him gently like I used to do to make him laugh. Still nothing. Each failed attempt only magnified my panic. The man who usually held me so easily, who could read me with a single glance, had closed off entirely. And in that quiet, I felt the weight of my misstep settle fully on my shoulders. This wasn't just a fleeting awkward moment. This was a wound in the intimacy we had built over years, a fracture I had created by misreading, by pushing too far too fast. I realized then that desire without consideration, play without consent, enthusiasm without awareness, it was reckless. And I had been reckless. I finally stopped pacing and sat beside him, careful not to touch, careful not to provoke. I let the silence hang, heavy and accusing, and whispered again, almost to myself, "I can't stand this. I can't stand not knowing if I've ruined us." He didn't answer, but this time, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not yet, but an acknowledgement, a subtle tremor in the tension that told me my presence was noted. I leaned my head against his shoulder cautiously, feeling the rigid line of his posture, and vowed silently that I would never overstep like this again. Consent isn't just a word, it's a living, breathing part of intimacy, a constant negotiation of comfort and trust. I had forgotten that, even for a moment, and now I had to live with the consequences. Minutes blurred into hours, and eventually, I drifted into a restless sleep, still beside him, still aching from the weight of the silence. When I woke, he hadn't spoken, hadn't moved, but I could see a softening in his gaze when he finally met mine. Just a flicker, just enough to give me hope. It wasn't an apology, it wasn't reconciliation, but it was a sign that the wall could come down if I approached it carefully, with patience, with respect. All day, the silence lingered, a heavy reminder of the night's misstep. Every glance, every accidental brush of hands, reminded me of how fragile connection could be, and how quickly it could fray when boundaries were ignored. I realized that intimacy isn't just about passion, it's about trust, about reading cues, about valuing the other's comfort above one's own impulses. By evening, he finally spoke. A single word. Talk? His voice was quiet, cautious, but it broke the silence that had been eating me alive. Relief surged through me, mingling with lingering guilt. I nodded, tears pricking my eyes, and we began, slowly, to untangle the tension, to rebuild the space I had disrupted, to listen and to learn. I had overstepped. I had been reckless. But in that painful, stretching silence, I had also learned something crucial, that love is not just fire and desire, it's patience, respect, and the quiet courage to wait when words fail. And when he finally spoke again, with a tentative laugh and a soft sigh, I realized that this moment, as excruciating as it had been, might just make our bond stronger, if we survived it together. Because silence, as cruel as it feels, can also be a teacher. And I was learning, painfully, profoundly, how not to overstep again.